No.
Welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast.
Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. This is episode 8. I'm Mike.
And I am Russell.
I want to start off by thanking everyone who has commented or hit us up about past reviews or anything we've spoken about. There's been quite a few people that have written to us saying, oh, wow, I've never done this or I've never done that, or this escape room sounds really cool. I'm going to try it based on what you said. So thank you. It makes us feel like we have a purpose and we're helping people decide on things to do like that. And our last podcast, the Blackout podcast, had got such great reviews and praise from our friends and other blackout survivors that I just wanted to thank them and thank you for listening. I knew it was 2 hours long, so thank you again for that.
Yeah, this is coming from a place of affection and passion. Definitely, it's really appreciated that people did reach out, particularly after the Blackout podcast, and say how it did affect them and it did bring up their own memories or intrigued them enough that they want to go in the future.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
And we've done a ton of things since the last one. We're going to start off with a couple escape rooms that we've done.
The first one we want to point to is the Crossroads Escape Games, which is located in Anaheim, California. And we did the one that they have open now called the Hex Room.
Crossroads is one that we've been watching for a while. We've been waiting for this to open. We first saw them at, was it Scare LA?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so Scare LA last year, so last August, almost going on a year, they had a little game at their table, a little clue, which Russell is still trying to figure out 6 months later. And it's a wonder why we didn't escape both times we did it.
It's not my fault.
Of course not. It's never your fault.
So the Hex Room is completely unique, I think, in the LA scene as far as escape rooms go. And to be totally honest, I think our group, we have done the Hex Room twice now, which is part of the uniqueness of this room. It offers the ability for you to go back and replay it. And the reason that this is possible is you are not thrown in all at once together with the same agenda. Each person in the team, which is a 6-member team, and you do need 6 people to play this effectively, you are each given a different area to explore and solve puzzles in before you work together as a group. And sometimes when you're separated, you are also providing clues to each other in the group. It works so well. And the thing that happens is we went back and were able to switch different areas at the beginning of the escape room, and we were able to play the game again. And we just made a pact among ourselves as to not spoil any puzzles for anyone who was working on something that we may know more about than they did, because the last time we played, we were the one who was responsible for solving that puzzle. I think that probably sounds a little more complex than it is, but seriously, the Crossroads Escape Games is incredibly fun. The Hex Room is a great immersive space.
This is one of my favorite rooms. And I think it's because of exactly what Russell just said. It doesn't follow the typical pattern of going into an escape room with just a large group of people. I think every escape room I've ever done has been like that, where except there's been a few where someone or a couple people are isolated from the group, but they really can't participate. Like that one in Vegas we did, where I was trapped in the dark for a half hour until you guys freed me.
That didn't work very well at all, because it relied on, everyone else finding a clue, and one person in our group missed an extremely obvious clue that would have, got you to join our group much quicker.
Right. And so for the most part, I would say 95% of the rooms that we've done, it's okay, everybody in your group go into this one big room and find clues and escape. And that's what I like about this, is because you have to solve things yourself. You have to get out of your own room by finding clues in your room and by communicating and by helping other people get out of their room, and they in turn help you get out of your room. And then when everyone's out, then you all have to escape the bigger room, which is awesome. And exactly what Russell said, the replay value is great, because what Crossroads does is they take 6 people and they give you a horror movie stereotype. So one person is a detective, one person's the nerd, one person's the virgin, one person is the jock.
There's the rebel.
And the rebel, yeah. And so each of the puzzles are geared towards that. So the nerd has really hard puzzles. The jock, you did the jock room, was it? They weren't that easy though, right?
No, they were absolutely not that easy. And as soon as I walked into the room, I realized that it was all combinations and codes, which terrified me at first because that's a weak area that I have. And but I actually escaped the room, I don't know, fairly well by myself, and they were fun. Like, yes, they were a little bit difficult, but man, it was a good time in there.
Oh yeah, and both times we did it, we did not escape. It was one of those things where if we had 10 seconds longer each time, we would have gotten it. We got to the last part and just could not get the final clue correct. We knew what to do. We had everything we needed to do it, but it's a game of telephone. That's all I'm going to say without trying to spoil anything.
And I think tension got to a couple of us.
Yeah.
Not me, I will say. I will say that.
Oh, really? Because I seem to remember me being trapped in my room for about really long because of something you didn't find that was the most obvious clue. So if you want to throw stones, bring it.
Okay, yeah, I blew that, didn't I? So, but the last minute, somebody was transposing numbers when they shouldn't have.
Yeah, but imagine how much more time we would have if I would have gotten out.
Oh, really?
Yep. And this is what fun escape rooms are. They bring everybody together and make friends not argue about whose fault it was that they didn't escape.
No, and seriously, we are kidding each other, and we have kidded each other before, and we will kid each other after this podcast. But I think the point is the replayability, the ability to go back and stumble and fumble and explore and find your way out of a different situation each time. I plan eventually to go back at least 6 times to this escape room.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things you mentioned earlier was that we made a pact to not tell anybody. It's like, oh, I remember this from the first time we did it. And I want to mention that because if we did not do that, if we actually went through and was like, oh, I know what this code is, I know how you can get out, I know what to do, we would have escaped with probably like 20 minutes left.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been as fun.
I know.
For each of us. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that for people listening, that would take the fun out of it.
Oh yeah.
I think So if you do it a couple times, if you do it more than once, don't share secrets unless you're going for a world record time escape. But even that's not really fun because someone else will do it twice and beat you. So do it the old-fashioned way and earn it.
Earn it, definitely. And trust us, I think when you get to the Hex Room, when you get to Crossroads Escape Games, you will find it hopefully as much fun as we did, and you're going to want to go back. Trust us. Even if you escape the room, you're going to want to go back.
Yeah. The first time we did it, I was the detective, and the second time I did it, I was the prom queen. And each of those roles was so different and the puzzles were so different. It was awesome. For example, the detective, he's kind of the central guy. He's the one that can help everybody else because obviously he's the detective. So it takes a lot of coordinating and a lot of communication for the detective to make things work. Whereas the prom queen, you're pretty much isolated and you're trying to find things in your room and you're trying to find things that will help you from other places. And the puzzles in that room are great and they really make you stop and think. And I loved each of those roles and I'm really excited to go back and try a different one.
Yeah, and I did the detective the second time and I was the jock the first time. Which, yeah, I really appreciate the fact that they announced I was going to be the jock and everyone in the group mocked and laughed at that. No, but the jock room was a great deal of fun, and the puzzles were challenging. I just highly recommend this room to everyone who's ever wanted to try an escape game. I will say this: I think it's a little bit higher level than beginner, maybe.
Yeah, and actually, the second time we did it, we brought 2 escape room virgins. They had never done it before. So shout out to Chris and Justin from sunspotscomics.com and their podcast, Sunspots Comics. You should listen to it if you're into comics. This was their first time doing an escape room, and they've always heard me talk about it and how much fun they are, but they never really did it before. So I was able to get them to go, and they loved it. They plan to go back. They plan to do all the other ones in LA that we've mentioned and that we've reviewed on here or on the website. They were super stoked about it. So even though it is a bit harder, the fun aspect is through the roof.
Absolutely.
We're going to go back to Crossroads eventually. We're not sure when yet, but in the meantime, they are working on a new room called the Funhouse. And I believe that's going to be more of a typical escape room. But the way they're making it sounds like it's going to be amazing and super fun.
Yeah, we talked to the creators briefly after our second and first time through the Hex Room, and they really, really sound like they're onto something with this new room. It sounds like it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, so once again, thank you, Madison and Luke. You guys are amazing. Your Hex Room is amazing. And you can visit them at crossroadsescapegames.com or on Facebook, Crossroads Escape Games.
Another room we should mention is called the Alchemist, which is another fun time to be had if you're into escape rooms.
The Alchemist room is part of Escape Room LA's stable of escape rooms. Right now they have 4, which I have done all of them at this point. Russell, you still need to do the Cavern, which you're going to be doing in a couple weeks, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I'm about a week away from attempting the Cavern.
Escape Room LA has 4 rooms. The Detective, which was featured on Conan O'Brien. There's a YouTube video of Conan and Jordan, his producer, doing it, and it's awesome. The Cavern, the Theater, which we had done a little bit ago and reviewed that, and their newest room, the Alchemist room. The Alchemist room is exactly what you think it would be. It's an alchemy dungeon, and it's awesome. There are things in this room that I've never done before. Unfortunately, if I tell you I don't know. Do you think it would be spoilers about that part? Because, I mean, that is an obvious puzzle. It's not the Cluedo puzzle.
I don't think we should mention it.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike is making hand gestures at me for those of you just listening and not actually seeing Mike.
Well, when you get into the room, you'll know. It's really interesting, and it can really be tough for some people, I think.
There are a couple of things that we have never had to do before in escape rooms. The puzzles are so interactive and in really new and creative ways.
Well, I will say this. Don't do the Alchemist room if you have a cold.
Oh, that's very, very funny. That works. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a good piece of advice.
Seriously, don't. I mean, you can, but if you are in a certain place, it might not work out for your benefit.
Overall, the one thing that I absolutely enjoyed the most about the Alchemist room is it's one of the escape rooms that is really great about creating a vibe and a mood. There's several really nice surprises along the way where you find secrets and things are revealed, and the room itself is extremely well designed for your team having to split up and work on things separately and then come together again. We described a similar situation with the Hex Room just with the Crossroads escape games, but here you're in the same space.
And that's one of the things I really liked about it is the fact that you have to split up and there are rules in place. For example, you cannot start on this puzzle until you complete this puzzle, and you cannot start on that until you finish this. Most escape rooms, you have to work together. I mean, obviously, to get out, everyone has to find clues and put them together. But with this one, you have to work together because you have to finish this one puzzle if you want to move on. And the other people have to finish their puzzle if they want to move on. And finally, at the end, you all come together. But that's only after everyone works together to get to the point where you all work together to escape. That makes sense, right?
I've been through the room, so it made sense to me. One of the things is, we've talked a little bit in the past about linear or nonlinear escape rooms, and there are different styles of escape rooms. One of the things I thought about The Alchemist that worked really, really well is there are chunks of it that are linear. Even though you're working separately, even though your group is split up and tackling different areas of the room, it tells a linear story, basically.
Right.
The other cool thing about The Alchemist that I'd like to mention is the atmosphere, the environment that is in that room. There are so many interactive things, and we felt the same way about the theater too, which is also at Escape Room LA, that you have to move things, and you have to pull and press things, and you actually physically have to get involved with the space around you, which is just so much fun. That adds such an element to an escape room where, like, oh my gosh, I earned this prop, and I have to take this prop and I have to do something with it. And the escape room, The Alchemist, has several of those moments along the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a really, really good time, and I think it's quickly becoming one of my favorites in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah. Everything they do, the next one seems to be better than the last.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you always hear about advice in escape rooms where if you can't get it, have someone else do it. And this rang so true in the Alchemist room. It was one of those things that hit you like a ton of bricks. There were a couple times that I noticed people were struggling with something. Someone else looked and bam, all of a sudden they got it without even thinking about it. And so keep that in mind when you're doing escape rooms, because it makes all the difference in the world.
Specifically, when we first tackled the very first area, I know you were working on something, and there was a woman in the room named Melissa who we were completely stumped, and she just looked at the puzzle and instantaneously went,
like, oh yeah, it's this.
Of course, this is obvious. Yeah. And everyone around her was like, let her just run with that, and we'll check back in a moment. And she solved it, and it was awesome. And when she showed us, she was actually writing stuff down. When she showed it to us, it was like, oh yeah, now that I see it, it makes complete sense. But it was so funny that it made sense to her instantaneously almost. And the rest of us were just staring at this chart, looking at it going, I have no clue.
Yeah. She's a smart cookie, that
absolutely.
Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
But
thank you for being on our team. We like when we were able to escape because you're so smart.
Yeah, absolutely. She certainly rose to the occasion in The Alchemist. And I think all of us had moments in The Alchemist. The strength, I think, of a room like The Alchemist is that the puzzles are so varied that each of us had a strength.
Yeah.
And each of us got a moment to go, oh, wait a minute, I got this.
And overall, it wasn't too... I mean, it was difficult, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't impossible.
Yeah, it was... to me, as far as I'm concerned, most of the Escape Room LA rooms that we've done, the theater was like this. I think the theater is a really good level of intensity and difficulty, and The Alchemist, I think, is a great balance
and
as
I
well.
believe they were designed by the same person.
Oh, cool. I did not realize that.
So Escape Room LA, make sure you listen to that. Maybe you should change your detective room a little bit, because that's impossible. Just saying.
So, yeah, we had some difficulty with the detective room.
I'm just kidding. Keep it as is. To find more info about Escape Room LA, you can go to escaperoomla.com and find them on Facebook at Escape Room LA. You recently did one that I did not do. And which one was... I think I'm going to do it coming up, but what was that? And can you talk about it?
I got a last-minute invitation, literally a couple of hours. A friend of mine called me and said, hey, I have this ticket to an escape room at 6 o'clock tonight. Can you join me? And I was free. So I went on down, and this was Captured Los Angeles. And the escape room was called the Starlet Killer. It was a very, very complex setup story, which led you into a room that was apparently owned by a serial killer who had been murdering Hollywood starlets. So all of the clues, it was sort of a period piece. All of the clues were centered around the murder cases and the investigation of the murder cases, and all of the clues were related somehow to the Hollywood starlets. Like I said, this was a last-minute thing. We got down there. My friend and I ended up being the only two people to attempt the room.
Oh, wow.
And it's a room that normally fills up with about 8 people. I think they potentially have 8 in the room. So we were stretched thin. I've never done an escape room with only 2 people before. We really, really were multitasking. We had some problems because there were only 2 of us. We weren't able to split up and tackle as many areas of the room separately as quickly as you normally would. we were told at the end that we got farther than any other two-man team ever to attempt that room. So I'm proud of what we were able to do, even though we didn't quite escape. I literally had my hands on the next to last thing that would have gotten us out of the room when our time ran out. So I think we did very, very well, but it was very challenging with only 2 people. The room itself, and I don't want to spoil too much because I know that you're planning on doing this room, Mike. You walk in, and it's... I won't say the production design is amazing. It's a period room, and it's fairly sparse. There's not many furnishings in it. But I really had a blast in this room because this was all about the puzzles. It was not about the environment. It was all about the puzzles, and we really, really had to put our brains to work to get through this. And eventually we did figure out everything we needed to do. We just didn't do it in the time. We needed like another 5 minutes. But the fact that we, as 2 people in a room that normally takes up to 8, were able to get that far, I had a blast and was very proud of what we did. I really like this room. I think Captured LA has done a really great job with the story, and the immersive room really puts you in contact with the backstory they tell you before you walk in. It's a very cohesive experience. I really enjoyed the puzzles in this. A couple of them were extremely difficult. We had to get a couple of clues along the way, and even after they gave us a clue, there is one puzzle near the end that we must have spent a good solid 5 or 6 minutes just staring at everything in front of us. Luckily, eventually I was sort of the one who started to figure it out. And then my friend and I worked together on it, and we got it. But it was really, really difficult. It was quite challenging, and yet, you know me, puzzles and riddles and things like that are not my strong suit. But I had a blast in this room, and it is a room that is completely nothing but puzzles. And the other thing I would like to compliment them on is there are areas of this room which are sort of linear, and then they fit into the nonlinear pattern of the room. Overall, I would have to say it's a nonlinear escape room, but you'd get like, oh, look, this is a clue. I have these items. Oh, look, they're related to this prop. Oh, look, this prop leads me here. And so it's sort of a nonlinear room with linear 3 or 4 puzzles linked together to each other inside that. So it was, which the reason I'm stating that is because what we found is we kept having to change our mode of thinking during trying to figure out the room, which added to the fun, added to the challenge. We really enjoyed doing this room.
How did you feel about just doing it with 2 people as opposed to, we usually do it with at least 6?
You know what? For this room, I actually had a really good time. But it also showed our strengths and weaknesses. Absolutely. It would have been nice to have a couple more people in the room. I liked it only being 2 people because we were able to challenge each other, and it also put you in the situation that we've talked about in bigger groups of sometimes you just had to back away and go, I don't get this, you have to look at this.
Right.
And there were a couple of really clever things in that room that I have never seen before. There's a couple of, there's one in particular that I don't want to say how you solve it, but it uses a technique I'd never seen before, which when we dawned on it, literally my buddy and I just looked at each other and went, I've never seen this. This is so cool. So, and then we geeked out for a moment and then got back to trying to solve what the heck it meant. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more about that, and by the way, we should say Captured LA has been around for a little while. They have changed location. We went to their new location downtown. If you want to check them out, go to captured-la.com. And the room that we did is called the Starlet Killer room. And they are opening up a new room very, very shortly. In their old location, apparently they had a really popular room that a lot of people have liked. And so what they're going to do is they're going to retool that room and open it at this new location.
Oh,
but
good.
I think these are guys to keep an eye on, definitely. And I cannot wait, Mike, for you to do this room because some of the puzzles I so want to talk to you about.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So those have been the escape rooms that we've done so far, and it looks like we're only 1 out of 3. Or 1 out of 4, technically. We did Crossroads twice. It didn't escape. We escaped from the Alchemist, but you didn't escape from Captured. So we're batting 25%. right now. That's horrible. We do podcasts about escape rooms and we can't even escape. We need to rethink what we're doing.
Well, it's an interesting philosophical thing because you and I have done escape rooms with people who become obsessed with the only goal is to escape.
Well, that is the only goal.
I disagree with you. We've talked about this in the fact
goal
that,
of going to an escape room is to escape, Russell.
Oh, really? Oh, shoot. I've been doing it wrong. No, what I was going to say is that I think part of the fun is exploring the room and the puzzles themselves and appreciating what is gone into making it. And so for me personally, I love getting out. I love escaping. But even if I don't, I still appreciate the room and I still love having the experience.
I do too, but that comes secondary. I want to get out, man. Come on.
Okay, all right. Just a slightly different perspective.
So as I was saying, those are the escape rooms we did and didn't escape from, except the Alchemist. And we have done some other things. There's been some haunts and immersive theater things going on. So, Russell, you've done a couple things lately that, again, I haven't done. So why don't you talk about those things?
Okay. Back in late January, I went to a show called Parturition, which was put on by What We Learned Here. That is a group that last fall kind of made a splash on the scene with a very, very interactive social media presence that specifically went after its audience of haunt fans and patrons. They did a show called Fear is What We Learned Here. It was a beautiful, dreamlike, eerie show that showed a lot of potential. Parturition was their second show. By the way, parturition, by definition, means the act of giving birth to offspring or young. So basically it means giving birth to your next generation. There's a lot of positive stuff about Parturition. It's a very theatrical show. Again, I think the strength here is that they create this weird, surreal, amazing, dreamlike feel inside their shows, which is incredibly appealing to me because they're using haunt techniques, definitely. The techniques that they use, to be totally honest, they're using the exact same techniques that Blackout uses with some addition. But they create a very different vibe, a very different feel. Parturition was a dream. That's what it felt like. It felt very, very odd. Now, going into Parturition, we were given the choice, because it was about birth, and you were very clearly going to go through a birthing process as the patron of this, you were given the option to go natural or theatrical. Natural being you going through the show naked, or theatrical, which is you could be clothed. They recommended natural because childbirth, you are naked. With some reservation, I agreed to go with the natural childbirth.
And are all the actors blind now?
So no.
Okay.
They are not. It was very dark in there, thank goodness. However, I will say this. The natural childbirth was the right choice, I think, for the first part of the show. You enter the show, and the beginning of the show, and I mean like the first 8 or 9, 10 minutes, being naked actually enhanced the show for me. And I don't want to go into specifics, but in case they decide to use this technique again, but you are dealing with slightly claustrophobic environments, and you are dealing with a very tactile situation. You're dealing with a very physical situation where things are rubbing up against you and you're touching things, and there was texture and there was like moisture and stickiness and there were all of these things, and being, unclothed, being naked, all of that all over your body definitely had an emotional impact. It made you feel vulnerable. It made you feel weird. However, I would also like to point out that after the first 10 minutes of a 30-minute show, for me personally, the nakedness became pointless and awkward and took me out of the show. Because at that point, I was just aware of, okay, well, I'm naked and there's a bunch of actors running around doing stuff to me and with me, and I don't see the point.
Right.
Which, look, there have been a couple of times before when I have ended up being naked inside a show for a very specific reason. And as long as that reason is to make me feel vulnerable or to make an emotional point, I have no problem going there. But in this situation, I think Parturition blew an opportunity in the fact that for the last 20 minutes of the show, I was laying on a table for the majority of it naked with actors, poking me with medical instruments and doing things like that, which to me was the longest section of the show. It was the least interesting section of the show, and the nakedness actually just made me feel awkward.
But devil's advocate, wouldn't you say that that is part of the show? Like, you're role playing a newborn? Like, even if it didn't hit you emotionally, doesn't it? Because to me it makes sense, and I know you think it doesn't really make sense, but if it's a natural birth and you're a newborn baby, you are naked.
I see your point, but at some point, babies are clothed, babies are diapered, babies are covered, in hospitals. That's what happens to them. So, and they made it clear also there was a slight complication in my birth, which was a moment of something being wrapped around my neck, obviously to, simulate a umbilical cord being wrapped around my neck. But the scene that I'm talking about, I didn't get on any level. There was an actor who literally, they would look at a medical instrument, poke me in the neck with it, and then walk away. And then show me a medical instrument, and then walk away. And then touch me, like almost comforting, and then walk away. And I didn't feel engaged by the two actors that were in the scene. Not necessarily because of the actors and their performance, because of what they were doing. Because I think the performances were fine. As a matter of fact, later in you meet a mother character who I thought her performance was wonderful. But at that point, I was so out of the show emotionally that it lacked impact. So, I just think that it wasn't the wisest choice for the whole show to be done that way for me. But absolutely enhanced the first part of the show for me. So it's a double-edged sword, and I'm just saying I have been in this situation before in haunts that, I don't mind being vulnerable because I go into a haunt and I want to experience the full show. I want to experience what they have to offer. And if that requires me stripping, as long as it's not about humiliation or making me feel bad or making me feel used, which all of that negative stuff, which could come up. And there are haunts out there that do use that technique to humiliate and abuse a patron. I don't think that's what happened in Parturition, but I will say this. If what we have learned here asks me in the future to get naked again, no. Because I don't think they've earned that. I think it's a very bold choice for their second show to go there and make that offer. I think it's a very bold choice on their part. But it didn't pay off for this patron. And I know for a fact, because I've talked to other patrons who have gone through the show, I'm not the only one who left feeling that way, that the nudity was, it didn't work for them. So, there's, and again, like I said, there's a lot of positive stuff here. I would like to mention that in both of their shows, they've used a short film in both of their shows. I think in both cases, that short film, really well done, enhanced the show, and added to the emotional beats of the show. Fear is What We Learned Here began with a film. In the middle of Parturition, you did have this interlude, a very symbolic sequence of images flowed in front of you that was very touching and very moving. But by that point, I wasn't able to enjoy the show because of the previous sequence where it didn't work for me. So the show derailed a bit for me because of the awkwardness of it rather than enhancing the show.
I know I didn't do this one, but was it similar to their first show?
The dreamlike aspect, very, very similar. Definitely.
And did they have original music? Because that was one of the cool things about the first show that I really enjoyed is original music, and you put headphones on and it went with the flow, and there was actually live mixing, I found out, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, here I don't believe it was live mixing, but I would like to point out, the Parturition was created by Nick Sherwin Jr. Nicholas Sherwin Jr. is how he's credited. We know him as Nick because he does move in the haunt community. The original music was by Charles Jones, and I think the music absolutely enhanced the experience for me. Absolutely, I think the music was very, very well done, and I really appreciate the fact that part of the emotion that I got from the show was definitely because of the music, the original music. And also, like I said, I think the performances were fine. I just think it was the show that didn't speak to me. The mother in the end, who was played by Megan Farrington, very good job, but I was so taken out of the show by the previous scenes that I wasn't present, if that makes sense, emotionally. For the final sequence, and which is a shame because I think she did a very good job. It's just the show, they derailed me emotionally before I got to her. So it was not a good experience, and the question becomes, was it worth the price of admission? For me, no.
Wow.
I know for other people, yes it was. For me, no.
So with that being said, are you planning to do another show?
To be totally honest, I'm a little on the fence, but because of the strength here, because they're using these haunt-esque techniques to create this immersive theater piece, and they are so good at this dreamlike vibe and feeling, yeah, I'm going to consider going back, absolutely, because there is a lot of strength here, and they are doing some unique stuff.
And did you say haunt-ass techniques?
Haunt-esque techniques.
Haunt-ass techniques will be better.
Okay. By the way, we should mention their website is whatwelearnedhere.com. If you want to learn more about future shows. And again, this was not a positive experience for me overall, but I'm willing to give them more chances in the future, definitely. There is definitely something interesting going on.
In addition to their website, you should find them on Instagram because that's where it seems a lot of announcements are made and clues to new shows coming up. So their Instagram is What We Learned Here.
Yeah, and beautiful, beautiful imagery. Their Instagram, it's worth following their Instagram for the images alone. So, and inspirational quotes.
What else have you done that I haven't done?
You chose not to go back to Sinister Pointe for their new event called Seance.
Correct.
Seance was an extreme disappointment. And we should mention that already, I went to the Midnight Show on Saturday, the first weekend. Sinister Pointe has already announced that they are canceling the second weekend. They're postponing all shows indefinitely. They're planning on retooling this entire project completely, and are going to allow people who went to come to the new event at no cost.
Yikes.
Which I think is an indication of how badly this did not work.
That reminds me of The Purge.
Yeah, the original live version of The Purge did something similar as well a few years ago. The reason Sinister Pointe claims that they are retooling this is that there was some confusion among patrons as to what the show was, which I kind of see where that might have happened for some people, because they did announce on their website that they were going to have a real medium and that this was a seance. I never, ever bought that. I never expected a real seance. Apparently, some people showed up expecting a legitimate seance. What I expected was a haunt-type show or event that had a seance theme. And
right,
apparently,
like a Houdini thing.
Possibly. So I was not disappointed in the format. I guess some people expressed disappointment in the format. I got exactly what I expected. I showed up, and it was it was a seance. Look, spiritualism at the turn of the century in this country was at its peak, and there were spiritualists all over the place, claiming that they could contact dead loved ones. What I expected when I bought a ticket was a recreation of one of those seances, using the techniques, using the trickery, using, all of those things that happened in a fake spiritualist seance. That's what I expected when I bought my ticket, and that's sort of the vibe they were going for, except what happened was it was very poorly delivered. The performer was awkward and fumbling and weak. His performance was along the lines of a few magic tricks, and then, ooh, did you hear that? Oh, Like, I sense the tension building. Do you? And there was no tension in the room. I actually paid an extra $10 more to go to a midnight show, which was being billed as more intense. There was absolutely nothing intense about the experience at all. There were some magic tricks for the first 3/4 of the show, and then they turned off the lights and played a bunch of loud noises in the dark, which was supposedly the spirits attacking. There were some things that happened in the dark which weren't well done. As a matter of fact, one person who came out that I knew turned to me and said, all right, so in the dark at the end, was there this like figure, like what happened? Because of the staging of it was so awkward, he literally, his sight line was so bad in a circle that he couldn't see the climax of the show from where he was sitting. So I guarantee you at least 3 or 4 people had the same thing happen to them, where they literally couldn't see the ending of the show effectively. And, I will say that the whole ending of the show is basically very similar to a show called Play Dead, which has had a successful run in New York and was successful run here in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. And I don't want to spoil the final reveal in case that it is part of the retooled version of Seance for Sinister Pointe. But the final reveal was the same thing in the show Play Dead a couple of years ago. So I knew exactly what was going to happen when the lights came up at the end. I was expecting it. I don't think the majority of patrons probably did, but I will say that this is the most disappointing thing I have ever attended at Sinister Pointe. I'm very happy that they've reached out to patrons and said, look, we know that this didn't live up to our standards and we need to rethink this, because it was horrible.
Russell, I really wish for the podcast you would tell us how you really felt about things.
So I will give Sinister Pointe, props for trying something different yet again. But I walked out with people who literally shaking their heads in disappointment. So good for them for realizing that it was a misfire, and I hope things improve in the future. The interesting thing about that weekend, Mike, is we did do a show that same weekend called Borrowed Time.
Yes.
And I thought it was very funny that I wound up 2 nights in a row sitting around a table with about 13 people, and 13. The 2 shows were remarkably different.
That's right. We went to Borrowed Time, and it was mind-blowing. I'm still daily talk about this one trick that happened. But before we get to that, Borrowed Time is an immersive magic show. It's taking place in LA. I believe it's only through the end of March.
I believe so, yes.
It got extended a couple times, but the magician is Helder, and I apologize because I am going to butcher your last name. It's Portuguese. Guimarães?
I think that's close, hopefully.
Okay. Hopefully it's close enough, so I apologize in advance. He is a world-famous competition winner. Like, he's won a bunch of different things for his close-up card magic. When you sit up close and see him, you realize why. He is amazing. I was blown away. I've been to quite a few magic shows in my time, and I love magic, and I feel like a kid because I don't know how it's done, and I get all giddy when they pick my card and things like that. But seeing what he was able to do was just, it's like he's a demon or something. He proves that magic is real, and it's amazing to me.
Enchanting is the word that comes to mind in the best sense. Like, I was literally just transported to a really different magical world that night. And it sounds like, I don't know. I also am a huge magic fan and have been to many magic performances. This was, 2 hours of nonstop, truly miraculous things happening literally sometimes inches away from us. And cannot recommend this highly enough. If you're a Magic fan, definitely check this out. If you can get a ticket, I know performances are selling out extremely fast.
And spend the extra money to get the front row seat.
Absolutely.
It will change your life. But even before you get into the room and the show starts. The waiting room, I guess lobby, so to speak, is almost like an escape game in a way.
I didn't think of it like that.
No, it's not an escape game, yeah. But you get clues, and you have to find things that you have to find the answer to the clues. And it was just a really good way to keep people intrigued and not bored waiting in line for the show to start.
Well, the thing that for me that room does is it put you back into a really childlike sense of wonder. There were puns. There were
Riddles.
Oh yeah, and a lot of it was on a very I hate to say silly, but very childlike, magical vibe. It put me in the perfect mood to walk into that show because I was having such a good time in the lobby. And it also brought people together because you'd be walking around and people would like, oh wait, I have this. Do you have something that can help me? Can I help you? Yeah, and it was very funny. It was very funny because, and for once, I knew an answer to something that you didn't know the answer to. That's rarely happens.
Yeah, that riddle was a pain in my butt, man.
But and then how silly did you feel when you learned the answer?
I was like, oh, that's clever.
Oh
like,
yeah,
I know it's one of those things like probably a 5-year-old knows in a book of riddles that he gets at school.
Maybe,
but still, it's like, oh, that's good.
Yeah. It's they create a wonderful atmosphere. The show is well worth the price of admission, and they keep the audiences very small. It's a very intimate, miraculous evening. Go.
Seriously, it will be worth it. Even if you hate magic, go to this because you will end up loving it. He's that good. If you want more information, go to their website at borrowedtime.la. Hurry, because you only have through the end of March.
There's been a couple of things I believe that you have done that I have not also. So one of those events I know was an immersive theater piece.
Yes, I went to the Plummer Project. And the Plummer Project was basically done or run by, I don't know the full story. The research, there's not much online that I can find out, but it's done by a bunch of La Habra high school students. It's part of their theater group, and they did an immersive theater piece that was awesome. When you think of immersive theater, you think of, and I'm not talking down to anybody, but you think, oh, this is done by a theater group, they're professionals, blah, blah, blah. But, I guess in my mind, high school students don't have that same kind of level. They had that level with this, and it was great. There were 3 total stories, but people only got 2 of them. I was lucky enough to get the ghost story, and I got another story about a Mexican ranch that I didn't really care for because, this is my haunt life. We should be talking about ghosts and demons and stuff like that, not about...
Was it just that you didn't relate?
Exactly. Okay. Like, it's like, I feel your struggle.
I sometimes feel that way because La Llorona is
right.
a story which keeps happening and we keep encountering it. And there's a level of that with me of like, oh, this is fascinating, but I have to find a way to relate to it.
So the Plummer Project started by you sign up, you get your tickets, and then they give you a mask. And then right there, it starts. You're led into the mayor's inaugurational ball, and you meet the mayor. There's a band playing, and then they have singers come, and there were nuts and drinks, and there was a mini bar inside this tent. And then the mayor made an announcement saying, okay, everybody go to their section. And on each of the section were different colors. And when you checked in, you got a different color. You got a wristband, and each one was a different color. I went with Debbie, and she got a different color than I did. So right there, I started getting excited just because of immersive theater in the past and escape rooms. And it's like, oh, we're going to get something different. This is going to be rad. Unfortunately, her 2 stories were both based on the ranch, and so she didn't have as good a time as I did. But when I started and the 2 tour guides came and basically started telling ghost stories, I was instantly thinking, this is awesome. Because the thing is, too, they didn't give any descriptions. They just said on their website an immersive theater piece, and I took a gamble on it. It's like, oh, let's see, it's close to home, it's in Fullerton. We can go to Angelo and Vinci's first because that's the best restaurant ever for Italian food, and have a good fun night. And to my surprise, they started off telling ghost stories, and I thought, oh my God, is this whole thing going to be ghost stories? And for me, the first part it was about 45 minutes long, and they took us all through the auditorium, and they did little scenes in each spot based on ghost stories. So the first part where we started on the stage. They told a story about someone hung himself. It was a ballet dancer, and they had ballet dancers dancing. Then when they told the story about him hanging himself, a noose fell down. So there were things like that were just so much fun, and it was so good. And then at the end of each story, we're led back to the stage, and all of the cast starts singing. And I'm not a theater nerd like you, Russell, so I didn't know if it was a theater song, but all of them singing it with a live organist, it was powerful. It really hit me. It was so good, and they would all the cast members would move around you. All of the patrons had to stay in one place, but the cast would move around you, and then they would stare at you creepily, and it was fantastic. The next one that I did, Debbie and I both did together, and that was one of the ones that had to do with the Mexican ranch and things like that. But at one part, we met I think he was a general or a captain, or he was the owner, and he was having a party. So all of the women there were dancing, and so I was dancing with this one girl for a little bit and things like that. So it was really cool. Like the immersive part of it was really, really cool, especially being done by a bunch of high school students. It was awesome, and it was jam packed. It was over 2 hours long, and
wow, that is ambitious.
Yeah, it really was. And I mentioned it was done by La Habra high school students, and it was actually written by Brian Johnson and his wife Callie Prendeville. And Brian is a teacher at La Habra High School, which makes sense since it's all La Habra high school students. But job well done. I don't know if you would ever listen to this, but I would love if it was more focused on the ghost stories aspect of it instead of the other stuff. But even still, I still liked it. I just like the ghost story part more. If you want more information, you can go to lhhsguild.com. So La Habra High School Guild.com. They should have more info about events coming up and things that they're doing.
Wow, I really wish I was able to attend that. I was out of town when you guys did that, and that sounds actually really interesting.
I had such a good time that night.
Very cool.
Job well done to everybody. Going down the immersive theater road, there's a new company in town called Wild Art, and they just put on H&G, A Public Outcry. Wild Art is put on by director Allison M. Keating. And she's originally from New York and came to L.A., and this was her first show, I believe, in L.A.
That was my understanding, too.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of this, and Mike, you pointed it out to me. We ended up going on different nights because of our schedule. I was just really surprised at the emotional impact this had on me, because I walked in completely unprepared, and I didn't know anything about it. We have a mutual friend who had reached out to me and said, I can't describe this, but I think you would enjoy it. You should go. And then I had already planned on going based on what reaction, because you sort of said the same thing as, I don't want to tell you anything, just if you can make it go.
Yeah.
So the fact that multiple people said to me, I think you'll enjoy this, but I'm not going to say anything to you, I'm in at that point. So I was really shocked when I went through it at, first of all, how completely dark the material is.
Oh, yeah.
I was not expecting anything on that level. And we should say that it's a performance art piece. It's an immersive theater piece where you follow characters back and forth between a few rooms. The story itself is told in a very abstract manner. We should say that the inspiration for this show, Allison M. Keating, the director, has stated that the inspiration came from back in 2012 when much of the country was in a horrendous drought, and at the same time the East Coast was being ravaged by a hurricane and horrible storm patterns. And this theater piece speaks to the horror which our environment can bring into our lives. And the opening of the show, you meet a couple of characters. I met the mom, who I have to point out that her performance was astounding. The mom was portrayed by Lucille Duncan, and she walked up to me in the pre-show period of time. You walked into a kitchen, and you interacted with a couple of characters in that kitchen until the show actually began. When the show began, basically the setup for the show is that They are farmers. It is a farm family, and she is gathering a family meeting, and you, the audience, are the kids. And you quickly learn in the first opening moments of the show that the drought has devastated the family to the point where they can no longer afford to go on, and the parents have decided the only choice that they have is to take the children into the wilderness and abandon them, because at least that's giving them a fair shot at survival rather than killing them. That is not a happy note to open a show on. And I was literally sitting on the floor during that portion of the show, and the mom was 3 feet away from me, and like I was horrified.
Yeah, I went into this thinking it was more of a Hansel and Gretel type thing. And
me too.
And so when that started happening, I was confused, and I didn't really understand how that took place, because I'm just familiar with, Hansel and Gretel, they meet the witch and blah, blah, blah. But
which does happen during the show.
Right. And by the way, terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
I told that actor afterwards that I was terrified, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, but wow.
I interacted with that same character afterwards, and I walked up, and the first thing I said was, "You need to know that you broke my heart." And they looked at me and went, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And they looked at me and went, "But I'm evil." And I said, "Yeah, but it comes from so much sadness." And because my first reaction was just how, after the horror of that character, how incredibly painful. There's so much pain in the show, in every character. And they just go for it, and it's really disturbing to watch unfold.
Yeah, and I liked it too, because I haven't been to as much theater as you have, and just I was never into theater in high school, but I love immersive things like this where you actually get to be a part of something. Just the fact of what was being able to be portrayed with basically empty rooms and a couple of props was incredible to me. The feeling that gave me, and taking me out of actually that space and putting me into where they said they were, was awesome.
And the character we're referring to, I believe, was played by Craig Gibson, is the actor's name. And the whole cast did an amazing job. But you're right. They did so much with so little, and all of it completely emotionally landed for me really, really well. It gets very weird. It gets very, very weird. Another character that I want to point to is the father, who was played by Murphy Martin. There was also Lisa McNeely is a character who kind of roams around through various scenes. Both of those characters brought such intensity to different portions of the show. And I keep going back to, there were moments of just, it was terrifying, but not from a horror sense, from a complete emotional devastation sort of realm. And there's a point in the show where the parents have left the children to fend for themselves, and they do find themselves in a position where they have a bounty of some kind. They're going to be okay, despite whatever happens to the kids.
Speaking of, did you eat?
I did not.
Oh, I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I basically got guilted into it. Because Dad was like, "We have this. Why aren't you eating?"
No, my crowd was very reserved. So it's like the witch type character like gave some of us stuff in our hand, but I think everyone was so freaked out that literally it was like the parting of the crowd. Like no one wanted to go near that character.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was that weird, and the fact that nobody, I think, wanted to interact with that character at first. But during that, at the end of that sequence, the parents used this phrase of "consume it, then move on." Consume it, then move on. And for me in that moment, I was so grateful for what I have in my life. Like there's like, holy crap, because this plays on very real terror. There are families out there. There is a reality in this country, and we are in a political season where symbols are being thrown around, stereotypes are being thrown around, and people are being used to feed the political rhetoric. And it's sometimes, I think, in this country, we lose sight of the fact that there are real consequences to poverty, and there are real consequences to not being able to feed a family, and that's what this taps into. And I walked out of that show so grateful, because I'm not a wealthy guy. I don't have a ton of money. I'm not rich in many senses. I think I'm rich because of the friends and family I have around me. But this thing was just devastating to me. It really, and during that sequence, I just remember, like, I am so lucky. I am so lucky. And kudos to them for putting me in that space.
Another thing that struck me was when I went, there were 4 or 5 people in the audience.
Wow.
And I know you said you had about, 20 or so?
Yeah, around 20.
And the fact that they still gave their all to those 5 people, it just shows you the commitment and how much they love doing what they're doing. And also, I'd like to point out that this was actually a musical.
Yes.
And the father has a great voice. And
yeah, absolutely.
He can play guitar, and everything about the lyrics were great, and his guitar playing was great, and it made sense to the scene, and it all worked really well together.
Yeah, we haven't talked a great deal about what we walked away from, and I mentioned the whole thing that it just made me grateful for the blessings that I have. Like, what did you walk away from? Like what did you think right after the show?
What the hell did I just see? I honestly, because I went in so expecting a retelling of Hansel and Gretel.
Oh yeah.
And so when that didn't happen, and like I could see the framework, but the story was just not there. So I left kind of confused, and like I don't really understand what happened, but at the same time, this was really cool. I know things hit you very differently than they do me. So
they do.
The fact that hearing you say that it made you feel that way was kind of crazy to me. Not crazy in a bad way, but it's like, wow, it's crazy in the way that the same exact show can elicit such different thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely reacted to what I thought was the sadness of the characters, and the fact that anyone would reach that decision where it was logical to consider killing your own children because you felt that was the healthiest thing for the family. That's horrifying.
Right. As of now, I don't think Allison has any other theater pieces in the works, but I believe she has an art show coming up. If you'd like more information on her, it's AllisonMKeating.com, and that's with 2 L's. And if you search Facebook for Wild Art, that's the immersive theater part of it.
And also, just to clarify, we should probably mention AllisonMKeating.com. Keating is Keating.
Right.
I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, they're definitely one to watch out for.
Thoroughly enjoyed this show, and if this show gets resurrected in any form, definitely recommend it to people. And something else, Mike, which you led me to recently, was you suggested I come down to your area for a book reading.
Yeah. And this is more of a public service announcement for people. Don't forget, there are things other than Facebook that you can get information from. Recently, I started reading a lot more, which means I've been going to the library a lot more. And the library's website, at least for LA County, holy crap, there's so much stuff there. I mean, this stuff isn't haunt related, but I mean, they have basically, you get a library card, you have a free access to Kindle books and to lynda.com, which which are a bunch of courses and things like that. So there's definitely benefits to having it, but also on the library's website, they have a list of events. So I was perusing the list of events one day and noticed Haunted East Los Angeles, a book reading. And I figured, why not? It's a Saturday. I love ghosts and hauntings, and I live near East Los Angeles, so maybe I can find some new spots to go ghost hunting. And that's exactly what we did. We went to the library and we listened to the author read from his book and the story behind it and how he got all the information.
So the lesson is definitely get a library card and check out the library website.
Yeah, exactly. The more you know. But the book is pretty cool. I haven't read it yet. It's called Haunted East Los Angeles. It's by Mario Becerra and Victor Huesca. It was cool. They did their research. They went to the community and asked about stories and they basically heard these firsthand from people that have witnessed them. I believe he said all of the stories they were told by multiple people that didn't know each other, and that's the reason they got included in the book.
True.
So go to the library, kids. Read. It's important. The last thing that we're going to mention that we've done is very interesting. It's called the tension experience.
And also we should mention just beginning.
Exactly. It's just beginning. We recently went through the first part of it, and we don't really know what it is. It could be a haunt. It could be an immersive piece. It could be an escape room. Like, we really don't know. All we know is that something is happening on April 1st, and everything on the Tension website and Facebook says coming to Los Angeles in 2016.
That's literally almost everything that we know.
Exactly. Which is why we love it.
Yes, it's been very interesting so far. Certainly don't want to reveal too much. We did have one sort of event where we had to show up and go through what they called a consultation, where we met a couple of characters who asked a lot of questions of us.
And the way we found out about it was kind of random. It was very, very word of mouth. There's not really marketing behind it. There's not really much of anything except someone was like, hey, check out this website out. It might be up your alley. And so when you go to the website, there are things that you need to do in order to sign up for their email list.
Little puzzle to solve.
Right. And that's kind of the thing that really drew me to it, is the fact that, first of all, the websites are really well done. Whoever coded that site, I wish I could have those skills, because it's awesome. It's not just a simple HTML thing. And sorry, I'm getting all nerdy now.
Yeah, that's expected.
If you go to the website and you follow them on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, you see that they are very puzzle oriented. And there are clues, and you have to decipher the clues, and basically it's almost like you have to earn your way in a way. In order to sign up for the email, you have to figure out how to do something. In order to get a consultation, you have to solve the clues that led you to something to get the consultation. I love this aspect. I love it so much. Like, I love being able to have to earn something, like earn my keep, so to speak. This is what they're doing.
I'm very intrigued. I'm not in love yet, I will admit, simply because, there's also been some confusion. I showed up for my consultation. They were late. Things like that, and I'm not the only person who's noticed it, to the point where people are now publicly commenting on that aspect of them. The consultation didn't go well for everyone because of information coming from the tension experience. So I'm not quite in love. I do like all of the imagery, the website, the quotes that they have pulled, and the quotes that they point to. I mean, the first thing I discovered was a quote by Edgar Allan Poe, which immediately turned me on. I was like, okay, like, these guys are after my heart. And so I'm definitely intrigued, and they have personalized a little bit. Like, I got sent a personal message that makes me think that they have done a little bit of research on who I am and what I am interested in. That intrigues me a lot. That sort of level of interaction is really intriguing to me, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the emotional aspect of this much more than a puzzle aspect, and they've engaged me emotionally so far. That's the strength that I see in them, because the puzzles are an activity. Engaging me emotionally actually brings me something. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I mean, you may not be totally in love, but I'm totally head over heels in love with this.
Good for you. I'm very happy.
Because, like,
I think I will be. I think I will be soon.
Just because the puzzle thing and having to go to a consultation, I mean, it's almost, it feels like it's an ARG, or the beginning of an ARG.
Yes, it does.
For those that don't know, it's either augmented reality game or alternate reality game, which basically puts you in you're living day to day, but these things are real and you're playing that role. There's one going on right now for 10 Cloverfield Lane, which there was an original one for the original Cloverfield, which was amazing. It just, everything ties in. So the fact that the Tension Experience posts letters from the OOA Institute, and the fact that you're going to this consultation at the Institute, things like that all weave in together, I love so much. And the fact that there's puzzles involved as well, and the quotes and the website, they don't look nice. They look kind of evil and horror like. So that's
another reason I think I'm going to be in love very
exactly.
shortly.
So like Russell was saying, the first part was this weekend, the consultation, and this is maybe a couple weeks after we first discovered the website.
True.
So this is brand new. If you're in LA and you're listening to this, go to thetensionexperience.com and find them on Facebook and add them, because I think this is going to be the start of something really, really cool.
It's going to be very interesting. I like what they're doing so far. I do.
Another thing I want to point out is this whole thing is a mystery to everyone we know.
Yeah,
least.
absolutely.
No, like usually if there's a new haunt, you can kind of get some backgrounds like, oh, it's this person or it's that company or something like this. This one, we have no idea what's going on or who's behind it. And the fact that it's so well done and there's a mystery makes it that much cooler to me.
Mm-hmm. Everything that they've done so far makes you believe that it's going to lead to some sort of show or event or something.
Right, there'll be a big payoff.
Yeah, I'm hoping that is the case.
Yeah. So once again, it's just starting. Get in on the ground floor. Go to thetensionexperience.com or on Facebook, The Tension Experience.
And figure out how to contact them.
Yes. Dun, dun, dun.
So I believe that wraps it up for this podcast.
Like a birthday present.
All right.
Thank you for listening. And if you like what you're hearing, please go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review and an actual review, not just star ratings.
Thank you very much for the people who have done that already.
Yes, thank you so much. Second, you can find us on Facebook at My Haunt Life and the Twitter at My Haunt Life. Or you can email us at mike@myhauntlife.com or
Russell@myhauntlife.com.
with 2 S's and 2 L's.
Because everyone misspells it.
Exactly. So, once again, thank you. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
Thanks for listening. I don't know. This is just spiraling downwards. I cannot talk today.